Let us execute an immediate sweeping analytical vector shift away from the Gothic stone estates of dark romance vigilante tracking loops and weaponized stalker surveillance matrices, and descend directly into the sharp, calculation-heavy tracking grids of high-stakes legal defense systems, weaponized marital infidelity, and the fiercely protective world of a premier defense attorney asset running raw, tactical survival loops. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, blood-stained courtroom perimeters and wealthy suburban residences of Washington, D.C., the exclusive procedural grid of an active, multi-layered homicide tracking operation, and the lethal analytical parameters of a sprawling, reputation-based survival matrix with the perfect marriage. The exceptional, pulse-pounding structural masterpiece marking the monumental, globally dominant, chart-topping domestic legal psychological thriller, engineered by the absolute undisputed sovereign of high-velocity courtroom statecraft, sharp psychological profiling, and rogue analytical manipulation, Jeneva Rose. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where a fierce, underestimated top-tier female defense attorney asset running an unyielding safety loop, her unfaithful artist husband running a chaotic survival sequence as a prime murder suspect, and an absolute defense of an individual's final personal sovereignty metrics collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn legal suspense thrillers, where an endangered, hyper-observant legal intelligence team must navigate an absolute maze of rigged municipal coordinates, elite upper-class cover-ups, and a deadly ring of active courtroom gaslighting while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised domestic ecosystem, where an analytical mind uses deep psychological profiling, calculated procedural boundaries, and absolute mental stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory killer network, and where the author utilizes an incandescent, brilliant top defense attorney is forced to defend her own husband after he is arrested for the brutal murder of his secret mistress diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits, this book is engineered to lock you in. Rose completely dominates the high-precision courtroom tradecraft meets chilling domestic betrayal puzzles dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating domestic paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by genre vargs like John Grisham, Scott Turow, Gillian Flynn, and B.A. Paris, while treating realistic legal forensics logistics, complex trial law enforcement alignment arcs, and protective high-density interrogation extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse asset, Sarah Morgan. Operating under a severe calculation-heavy handicap of massive domestic emotional trauma, limited institutional police backing, and a hyper-visible targeting profile by the district's aggressive prosecution capos. Behind Sarah's rigorous legal database footprints and tense client cross-examination ledger logs lies an intricate matrix of hidden faction allegiances, deeply buried high society secrets, and sharp, high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Her collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight behind a lifetime of protecting high-profile clients and surviving complex judicial ambushes. Her entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from an elite prosecution network, parsing complex behavioral shifts from her deeply flawed husband Adam, and shielding her vulnerable sanctuary nodes from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleanup offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches her active scanning perimeter. Adam's secret mistress is discovered brutally murdered in the couple's isolated lake house, instantly cross-referencing Adam with a high-level calculated malice when he is arrested as the prime suspect. As the hidden predator's calculation-heavy execution phases enter an increasingly lethal terminal tier across the legal registry, a series of suspicious evidence sabotage attempts, targeted witness frame-ups, and calculation-heavy media ambushes threaten to permanently eliminate Sarah and Adam from the active civilian registry. The official diagnostic metrics of the global tracking centers flash white-hot when her defensive trial maneuvers and raw physical tradecraft reveal that her defense of an unfaithful spouse is radically, impossibly altering the legal community's historical balance of power. The standard boundaries of routine criminal defense and peaceful marital compliance protocols crumble, and our central protagonists run completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. They are thrust directly into an active invisible war across DC's wealthy elite circles, where deceptive old money families, highly manipulative forensic experts, and a calculation-heavy psychological network launch aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress their survival data stream.
The tactical perimeters instantly explode as their historical and survival war turn completely active, transforming the isolated lakehouse quinterings, dark courtroom surveillance perimeters, and private fortified office chambers into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Sarah Morgan is purposeful and resolute, determined to deploy her massive intuitive cross-examination skills, immense legal stamina, and persistent defensive dominance to maintain their perimeter, only to realize Adam's hidden internal secrets and shifting narratives match her raw tactical speed step for step. Our protective, hyper-vigilant protagonist is forced to deploy her massive intuitive tradecraft, elite evidentiary mapping skills, and raw intellectual stamina to preserve her focus before the next competitive cleanup phase permanently deletes her progress. Every midnight archive excavation, every silent choice to stand off against an arrogant district attorney behind standard security barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at her reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the high society elite's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Jeneva Rose reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial setup or managing a difficult courtroom testimony. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of institutional hierarchy and domestic supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of dark, possessive loyalty around their partnership, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes evidentiary breakthroughs shift the clock into its terminal phase, proving that historical emotional hazards have tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending Lockrid trap and permanently secure her sanctuary, our resilient hero must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a legal thriller, domestic suspense, murder mystery, high-velocity contemporary noir puzzle that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one-whispered confession triggers a fatal courtroom showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped for personal coordinates carries massive structural weight. Rose writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct, subtle scent of polished mahogany, expensive perfume, old legal archives, rain-soaked asphalt, dynamic adrenaline, spilled copper, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this benchmark entry into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total hard-earned advancement to their horizon. The perfect marriage is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes action fiction and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdownable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the fleet.